Bullies attacked a poor black girl into a coma. Then her father brought the entire school to its knees. The hospital corridor smelled of antiseptic and despair. Machines beeped their mechanical symphony of life support while Maya Thompson lay motionless in room 314, her small frame dwarfed by tubes and wires that kept her tethered to this world. The bruises covering her face told a story no 15-year-old should ever have to live. Purple and black marks that painted a map of cruelty across her dark skin. Her mother, Sarah Thompson, hadn't left the chair beside the bed in 3 days. Dark circles ringed her eyes like shadows of grief, and her hands, calloused from years of double shifts at the diner, trembled as she held her daughter's still fingers. "Please, baby," Sarah whispered, her voice cracking like autumn leaves. "Please come back to me." The attack had been brutal. Security footage from Lincoln High School showed it all. 3 students cornering Maya by her locker, their fists and feet finding their target with sickening precision. The video had gone viral within hours, spreading across social media like wildfire, igniting outrage and heartbreak in equal measure. But what the cameras couldn't capture was the sound Maya made when she hit the concrete floor of the hallway, a sound that would haunt every witness for the rest of their lives. Hello, beautiful souls watching from wherever you are in this world, whether you're in your living room, on your commute, or taking a break from your day. I hope you're doing well, and if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button because stories like Maya's need to be heard, shared, and remembered. Your support helps us bring these powerful narratives to light. Now, before we continue with Maya's story, I have to ask, where are you watching from today? Drop a comment below and let me know your city or country. There's something powerful about knowing we're all connected across the globe, sharing in these moments of human resilience together. The news crew had packed up hours ago, their cameras and microphones no longer needed now that they had their sound bites about another tragic case of school violence. The reporters had gotten their interviews with shocked classmates, their footage of the bloodstained hallway, their quotes from administrators promising thorough investigations and policy reviews. But they had all missed the most important part of the story. Because 3,000 miles away in a glass-walled penthouse overlooking the Seattle skyline, Vincent Lawson was about to see his daughter's face for the first time in 10 years. Vincent had been reviewing quarterly reports when his assistant knocked on his office door, her face pale with urgency. "Mr. Lawson, you need to see the news. There's been an incident at a school in Georgia." He almost dismissed it. Vincent Lawson, CEO of Lawson Enterprises, didn't have time for random news stories about schools he'd never heard of in towns he'd never visited. His empire of tech companies and real estate ventures demanded constant attention, and his calendar was already packed with merger meetings and investor calls. But something in his assistant's voice made him look up from his mahogany desk. "It's about a girl named Maya Thompson," she said softly, holding out her tablet. "The last name? I thought you should know. Thompson." The name hit Vincent like a physical blow, stealing the breath from his lungs and sending his heart into overdrive. His hand shook as he took the tablet, and when Maya's photograph filled the screen, those same dark eyes that had haunted his dreams for a decade, that same stubborn chin he recognized from looking in mirrors, the device clattered to the floor. "No," he whispered, but the word came out strangled, barely audible. The news anchor's voice seemed to echo from a great distance. 15-year-old Maya Thompson remains in critical condition after being brutally attacked by classmates at Lincoln High School. Her mother, Sarah Thompson, a local diner waitress, has been by her bedside since the incident occurred 3 days ago. Sarah, sweet, beautiful Sarah with her infectious laugh and her dreams of becoming a teacher. Sarah, who had loved him with a fierce devotion that scared him in his 20s. Sarah, whose tears he could still see in his mind's eye as he walked out of their tiny apartment 10 years ago, choosing his ambition over their family. Sarah, who had been 3 months pregnant with their daughter when he decided he wasn't ready to be a father. Now that daughter, his daughter, was fighting for her life, and he had no idea if she even knew his name. Vincent's legs gave out, and he sank into his leather chair as the weight of 10 years' worth of consequences crashed down on him. He had built an empire, accumulated wealth beyond imagination, earned respect and fear in equal measure throughout the business world. But he had never stopped running from the family he had abandoned. And now it might be too late to make things right. The news report continued, showing footage of the small house where Sarah and Maya lived. Peeling paint, a sagging porch, a rusty mailbox that spelled out Thompson in faded letters. The contrast between their modest home and his penthouse felt like a knife twisting in his chest. He had money, power, influence that could move mountains and topple governments. His daughter had been beaten into a coma, and he hadn't even known she existed in his world until 3 minutes ago. Vincent's hands found his phone, fingers trembling as he searched for the earliest flight to Georgia. As the screen loaded departure times, one question burned through his mind like acid. What kind of man lets his child grow up believing she's not worth fighting for? But more terrifying than that question was another one, the one that would determine everything that happened next. What kind of man was he willing to become to save her? If this story is already pulling at your heartstrings, we're just getting started. Stories of redemption, family, and justice need voices to carry them forward. So please, take a second to subscribe and ring that notification bell. Maya's journey is about to take us all on an emotional ride that will change how you see forgiveness, family, and the power of a father's love. And I'm curious, have you ever had a moment that completely changed the trajectory of your life? Share in the comments below, because Maya's story is about to show us that sometimes our biggest mistakes become the catalyst for our most important victories. Maya Thompson had always been different from the other kids at Lincoln High School, but not in the ways that should have mattered. While her classmates arrived in cars their parents bought for their 16th birthdays, Maya walked the 3 miles from Elm Street every morning, her sneakers worn thin from months of pavement pounding. While they carried designer backpacks stuffed with the latest gadgets, Maya clutched a secondhand messenger bag that Sarah had found at a thrift store, its faded blue canvas held together with safety pins and determination. But Maya's differences ran deeper than material things. At 15, she possessed a quiet intelligence that made teachers take notice and an inner strength that came from watching her mother work 2 jobs just to keep their lights on. She tutored younger students after school, not for extra credit, but because Mrs. Rodriguez at the elementary school paid her $20 a week to help kids with their math homework. $20 meant the difference between having milk for cereal or eating it dry. Maya's world revolved around her mother's schedule. She knew that Sarah left for her morning shift at Rosie's Diner at 5 a.m., serving coffee and eggs to truckers and early-rising construction workers. She knew her mom would come home smelling like bacon grease and disappointment, grab a 2-hour nap, then head out again for her evening job cleaning offices downtown. Maya had learned to be invisible during those precious afternoon hours, doing her homework in silence so her mother could sleep. What Maya didn't know was that every night, Sarah lay awake staring at the ceiling, wondering if she was enough, wondering if her love could fill the father-shaped hole in her daughter's life. "Mama, why don't I have a daddy like other kids?" Maya had asked when she was 7, her voice small and curious rather than accusatory. Sarah had knelt down to meet her daughter's eyes, those beautiful dark eyes that looked so much like Vincent's it sometimes stole her breath. "Some families are different, baby girls, but different doesn't mean less. You and me, we're a team. We're enough." Maya had nodded solemnly, accepting this explanation with the kind of trust that only children possess. But as she grew older, the questions became harder to answer with simple reassurances. Take a moment right now to think about the strongest person you know. I bet it's someone like Sarah, someone who found a way to be everything their child needed, even when the world told them it wasn't enough. If that person is watching this story with you right now, give them a hug. If they're not here anymore, take a second to honor their memory. And please, subscribe to help us share more stories about everyday heroes like Sarah Thompson. 3,000 miles away, Vincent Lawson had built his empire on the foundation of everything he'd walked away from. Every late night in the office, every aggressive business deal, every calculated risk that paid off in millions. They were all fuel for the engine of his guilt. Success had been his drug of choice, and he'd overdosed on it for 10 years running. His penthouse apartment reflected the man he'd become: cold, efficient, impressive to outsiders, but empty of warmth. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a view of Seattle's skyline that realtors called breathtaking. But Vincent had stopped seeing beauty in anything years ago. His furniture was expensive but impersonal: black leather, chrome fixtures, abstract art chosen by an interior designer who'd never asked what he actually liked. The only personal touch in the entire space was hidden in his bedroom dresser: a photograph of Sarah, taken during their last happy weekend together. She was laughing at something he'd said, her head thrown back in pure joy, one hand resting protectively over her barely visible pregnancy bump. Maya's first picture, though neither of them had known it at the time. Vincent had kept that photo through every move, every relationship that failed to fill the void he'd carved in his chest, every sleepless night when he wondered what his daughter looked like now. He'd memorized every detail of Sarah's face in that moment of happiness. Happiness he destroyed 3 weeks later when he told her he wasn't ready to be a father. "I need to focus on my career, Sarah. I can't be tied down right now. You understand, right?" The look in her eyes when he said those words had haunted him for a decade. Not anger. Anger would have been easier to live with. Just disappointment. As if she'd finally seen who he really was beneath all his promises and dreams. "I thought you loved me," she'd whispered. "I do love you. But love isn't enough. Not for what I want to accomplish." How wrong he'd been. How catastrophically, life-alteringly wrong. Vincent's phone buzzed against the mahogany surface of his desk, jarring him back to the present. His assistant's voice was gentle but urgent. "Mr. Lawson, I've booked you on the next flight to Atlanta. It leaves in 2 hours. Cancel everything on my calendar for the next 2 weeks," Vincent said, his voice steady despite the earthquake happening inside his chest. "And Rebecca, I need you to research Lincoln High School. I want to know everything. The principal, the school board members, their funding sources, who their biggest donors are. Everything." "Of course, sir. May I ask?" "My daughter is in that hospital," Vincent said quietly, "and someone is going to answer for what happened to her." While Vincent prepared to confront his past, Lincoln High School buzzed with whispered conversations and nervous energy. Principal Dorothy Hartwell paced her office like a caged animal, her usually pristine appearance disheveled from 3 days of crisis management. Phone calls from reporters, meetings with district officials, pressure from parents. It was enough to drive anyone to the edge. But Dorothy's stress wasn't just about bad publicity. She knew things about Maya Thompson's attack that hadn't made it into the official reports. Things that could destroy her career if they ever came to light. She knew that the 3 students who'd beaten Maya, Jason Walker, Brett Hayes, and Madison Clark, weren't just random bullies acting out of teenage cruelty. They were the children of Lincoln's most influential families, the ones whose donations kept the school's programs running and whose political connections protected the administration from unwanted scrutiny. She knew that Maya had been targeted not just for being poor and different, but because she'd been asking uncomfortable questions about the school's scholarship program. Questions that threatened to expose how certain students received benefits they hadn't earned. Most importantly, Dorothy knew that she had failed Maya Thompson long before that brutal attack in the hallway. Every time Maya had reported harassment, every time she'd asked for help with bullying, Dorothy had found reasons to minimize the situation or blame Maya for not fitting in better. Now Maya was fighting for her life, and Dorothy was fighting to save her own career. Her secretary's voice crackled through the intercom. "Mrs. Hartwell, there's someone here to see you. He doesn't have an appointment, but he says it's about Maya Thompson." Dorothy's blood turned to ice. "Did he give you a name?" "Vincent Lawson. He says he's Maya's father." The world tilted sideways. Maya Thompson didn't have a father. Everyone knew that. Sarah Thompson was a single mother, and had been for as long as anyone could remember. So who was this man, and what did he want? Dorothy's hands shook as she smoothed her hair and straightened her blazer. Whatever storm was coming, she needed to be ready for it. But as Vincent Lawson walked through her office door, tall, impeccably dressed, with eyes that burned with barely contained fury, Dorothy Hartwell realized that no amount of preparation could have readied her for this moment. Because the man standing before her didn't look like someone who could be managed, manipulated, or dismissed. He looked like someone with the power to tear her world apart. And the most terrifying part, he looked exactly like he intended to use that power. We're witnessing the calm before the storm, aren't we? Vincent is about to walk into that school, and something tells me Lincoln High School has no idea what's coming their way. If you're feeling that anticipation building in your chest, you know this story is about to explode into something incredible. Make sure you're subscribed, because you won't want to miss what happens when a father's love meets a system that failed his daughter. Drop a comment and tell me, what do you think Vincent should do first? Sometimes the most powerful response isn't the loudest one. Sometimes it's the most strategic. The hospital corridor smelled of antiseptic and despair. Machines beeped their mechanical symphony of life support, while Maya Thompson lay motionless in room 314, her small frame dwarfed by tubes and wires that kept her tethered to this world. The bruises covering her face told a story no 15-year-old should ever have to live. Purple and black marks that painted a map of cruelty across her dark skin. Her mother, Sarah Thompson, hadn't left the chair beside the bed in 3 days. Dark circles ringed her eyes like shadows of grief, and her hands, callous from years of double shifts at the diner, trembled as she held her daughter's still fingers. "Please, baby," Sarah whispered, her voice cracking like autumn leaves. "Please come back to me." The attack had been brutal. Security footage from Lincoln High School showed it all. 3 students cornering Maya by her locker, their fists and feet finding their target with sickening precision. The video had gone viral within hours, spreading across social media like wildfire, igniting outrage and heartbreak in equal measure. But what the cameras couldn't capture was the sound Maya made when she hit the concrete floor of the hallway, a sound that would haunt every witness for the rest of their lives. Hello, beautiful souls watching from wherever you are in this world, whether you're in your living room, on your commute, or taking a break from your day. I hope you're doing well, and if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button because stories like Maya's need to be heard, shared, and remembered. Your support helps us bring these powerful narratives to light. Now, before we continue with Maya's story, I have to ask, where are you watching from today? Drop a comment below and let me know your city or country. There's something powerful about knowing we're all connected across the globe, sharing in these moments of human resilience together. The news crew had packed up hours ago, their cameras and microphones no longer needed now that they had their sound bites about another tragic case of school violence. The reporters had gotten their interviews with shocked classmates, their footage of the bloodstained hallway, their quotes from administrators promising thorough investigations and policy reviews. But they had all missed the most important part of the story. Because 3,000 miles away in a glass-walled penthouse overlooking the Seattle skyline, Vincent Lawson was about to see his daughter's face for the first time in 10 years. Vincent had been reviewing quarterly reports when his assistant knocked on his office door, her face pale with urgency. "Mr. Lawson, you need to see the news. There's been an incident at a school in Georgia." He almost dismissed it. Vincent Lawson, CEO of Lawson Enterprises, didn't have time for random news stories about schools he'd never heard of in towns he'd never visited. His empire of tech companies and real estate ventures demanded constant attention, and his calendar was already packed with merger meetings and investor calls. But something in his assistant's voice made him look up from his mahogany desk. "It's about a girl named Maya Thompson," she said softly, holding out her tablet. "The last name? I thought you should know. Thompson." The name hit Vincent like a physical blow, stealing the breath from his lungs and sending his heart into overdrive. His hand shook as he took the tablet, and when Maya's photograph filled the screen, those same dark eyes that had haunted his dreams for a decade, that same stubborn chin he recognized from looking in mirrors, the device clattered to the floor. "No," he whispered, but the word came out strangled, barely audible. The news anchor's voice seemed to echo from a great distance. 15-year-old Maya Thompson remains in critical condition after being brutally attacked by classmates at Lincoln High School. Her mother, Sarah Thompson, a local diner waitress, has been by her bedside since the incident occurred 3 days ago. Sarah, sweet, beautiful Sarah with her infectious laugh and her dreams of becoming a teacher. Sarah, who had loved him with a fierce devotion that scared him in his 20s. Sarah, whose tears he could still see in his mind as he walked out of their tiny apartment 10 years ago, choosing his ambition over their family. Sarah, who had been 3 months pregnant with their daughter when he decided he wasn't ready to be a father. Now that daughter, his daughter, was fighting for her life, and he had no idea if she even knew his name. Vincent's legs gave out, and he sank into his leather chair as the weight of 10 years' worth of consequences crashed down on him. He had built an empire, accumulated wealth beyond imagination, earned respect and fear in equal measure throughout the business world. But he had never stopped running from the family he had abandoned. And now it might be too late to make things right. The news report continued, showing footage of the small house where Sarah and Maya lived. Peeling paint, a sagging porch, a rusty mailbox that spelled out Thompson in faded letters. The contrast between their modest home and his penthouse felt like a knife twisting in his chest. He had money, power, influence that could move mountains and topple governments. His daughter had been beaten into a coma, and he hadn't even known she existed in his world until 3 minutes ago. Vincent's hands found his phone, fingers trembling as he searched for the earliest flight to Georgia. As the screen loaded departure times, one question burned through his mind like acid. What kind of man lets his child grow up believing she's not worth fighting for? But more terrifying than that question was another one, the one that would determine everything that happened next. What kind of man was he willing to become to save her? If this story is already pulling at your heartstrings, we're just getting started. Stories of redemption, family, and justice need voices to carry them forward. So please, take a second to subscribe and ring that notification bell. Maya's journey is about to take us all on an emotional ride that will change how you see forgiveness, family, and the power of a father's love. The first phone call Vincent made was to his private jet pilot at 11:47 p.m. Pacific time. "I need to be in Georgia by morning," he said, his voice steady despite the hurricane of emotions tearing through his chest. "Columbus Regional Airport. Whatever it costs." The second call was to Marcus Webb, his head of security and the only man Vincent trusted with his darkest secrets. Marcus had been a Marine before becoming Vincent's personal investigator, cleaner of messes, and when necessary, the enforcer of consequences that courts couldn't deliver. "I need everything," Vincent said as he threw clothes into a suitcase with shaking hands. Financial records, employment history, family connections, social media profiles. Every person connected to Lincoln High School, every administrator, every board member, every politician who takes their donations. "I want to know what they eat for breakfast and how much debt they carry." "How deep do you want me to dig?" Marcus asked, already pulling up databases on his computer. "Deep enough to bury them." But the third call was the one that mattered most. At 12:15 a.m., Vincent's fingers hovered over Sarah's contact information, a number he'd memorized but never had the courage to dial. The hospital had listed her as Maya's emergency contact, and getting her number had required only one phone call to his assistant. The phone rang 4 times before her exhausted voice answered. "Hello, Sarah." The name came out like a prayer and a confession. "Sarah, it's Vincent." Silence stretched between them across 3,000 miles and 10 years of abandonment. Vincent could hear the soft beeping of hospital machines in the background, the sound of his daughter's life hanging in the balance. "How dare you?" Sarah finally whispered, and Vincent felt each word like a physical blow. "How dare you call me now? I saw the news. I didn't know. I never knew she—" Vincent's composure cracked, and for the first time in a decade, his voice broke. "Sarah, I didn't know what she looked like. I didn't know she was so beautiful, so smart. I didn't know about the scholarship or her grades or—" "Get out." Sarah's voice rose to a scream that echoed through the hospital corridor. "Get out of our lives. You think you can just call after 10 years because something bad happened? You think your guilt gives you the right to my daughter's pain?" Nurses hurried toward Maya's room as Sarah's cries grew louder. "She doesn't even know your name. She stopped asking about her father when she was 7 because I couldn't keep making excuses for a man who sends money but never sends love." Vincent closed his eyes, absorbing every word like the punishment he deserved. "I'm coming, Sarah. I'm already on my way. Don't you dare. Don't you dare show your face here. We survived without you, and we'll survive this without you too." The line went dead. I know some of you are probably thinking Vincent doesn't deserve forgiveness, and, honestly, you might be right. But sometimes the most powerful stories are about people who have to earn their way back from the worst mistakes they've ever made. If you're invested in seeing how this plays out, hit that subscribe button because we're about to witness a man who has everything learned what it really means to lose it all. Vincent's jet touched down in Columbus, Georgia at 7:23 a.m. Eastern Time. By 8 a.m., he was walking through the doors of Columbus Regional Hospital, his $3,000 suit incongruous among the tired families and overworked staff. He found room 314 without asking directions, drawn by instinct and the sound of Sarah's voice reading aloud. She was reading from a worn copy of The Hate You Give, her voice soft and steady as she read to her unconscious daughter about Star Carter's journey of finding her voice. Vincent stood in the doorway, seeing his daughter's face clearly for the first time since she was 3 months old. Maya looked exactly like Sarah, the same strong jawline, the same elegant cheekbones, the same full lips that used to smile against his neck when Sarah fell asleep in his arms. But she had his eyes, dark brown and determined, even in unconsciousness. "She can hear you," Vincent said quietly. Sarah's head snapped up, her eyes blazing with fury when she saw him. "I told you not to come, and I told you I was coming anyway." Vincent stepped into the room, and for the first time, he saw the full extent of Maya's injuries. Her face was swollen beyond recognition, her left arm was in a cast, and tubes ran down her throat to help her breathe. The sight of his daughter, broken, battered, fighting for her life, ignited something primal and violent in Vincent's chest. His hands clenched into fists as he imagined the 3 teenagers who had done this. Imagine their faces. Imagine making them pay for every bruise on his little girl's body. "Who did this?" he asked, his voice deadly quiet. 3 kids at her school. Brittany Madison, Connor Black, and Tyler Stone. They've been suspended pending investigation. Sarah's voice was bitter. "The school says it was an unfortunate incident, and they're reviewing their anti-bullying policies." Vincent's phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Complete files on Madison, Black, and Stone families attached. Also sending Lincoln High School board member profiles and financial records. "You're going to want to see this." Vincent opened the first file and felt his rage crystallize into something cold and calculating. Brittany Madison's father was James Madison, a city council member who owned 3 car dealerships. Connor Black's mother was Rebecca Black, a state senator who'd been pushing for education budget cuts. Tyler Stone's parents were both attorneys who'd successfully defended the school district in multiple lawsuits. These weren't just random bullies. These were the children of people who believed their money and power made them untouchable. They had no idea what was coming for them. "The school won't do anything," Sarah continued, unaware of the storm brewing behind Vincent's eyes. "Their families have connections. Money. The kind of influence that makes problems disappear." Vincent looked at his daughter's still form, at the machines keeping her alive, at the mother who had raised her alone while he played Empire Builder. For 10 years, he had accumulated power for its own sake, built wealth as a monument to his own ambition. It was time to put to work. "Sarah," he said, his voice carrying the weight of mountains, "I need you to understand something. I failed as a father. I failed as a man. I have spent 10 years running from the biggest mistake I ever made, and I can't undo that. But I could do one thing right." He turned to look at her directly, and Sarah saw something in his eyes that made her step backward. Not fear, but recognition of a force that had just been unleashed. "I can make sure the people who hurt our daughter never hurt anyone again. I can make sure they understand that Maya Thompson is not some poor girl they can destroy without consequences. I can show them exactly what happens when you touch something that belongs to me." Sarah's anger flickered, replaced by something like awe at the quiet fury in Vincent's voice. "What are you going to do?" she whispered. Vincent pulled out his phone and began typing a message to Marcus. "I want to know everything about Lincoln High School's funding sources, every grant they receive, every donor who keeps them afloat. I want leverage on every person who has the power to hire, fire, or destroy careers in that building. And I want the personal cell phone numbers of James Madison, Rebecca Black, and the Stone parents. They're about to learn why you don't mess with Vincent Lawson's family." "I'm going to do what I should have done 10 years ago," he said, never taking his eyes off Maya's face. "I'm going to protect my daughter." Outside room 314, storm clouds were gathering. But the real storm, the one that would bring Lincoln High School and everyone connected to it to their knees, was just beginning. And this time, Vincent Lawson wasn't running from his responsibilities. He was embracing them with the fury of a father who had just remembered what he was willing to destroy to save the people he loved. Drop a comment below if you've ever seen someone completely underestimate the wrong person. Because Maya's bullies and their powerful families are about to learn that some fathers don't just get mad. They get even in ways that change everything forever. Vincent's war began at 9:15 a.m. with a single phone call to the office of Lincoln High School. "This is Vincent Lawson. I need to speak with Principal Miller immediately." The secretary's voice was professionally dismissive. "I'm sorry, Mr. Lawson, but Principal Miller is in meetings all morning. If you'd like to schedule an appointment, tell him Vincent Lawson is on the line." Tell him I'm Maya Thompson's father. And tell him he has exactly 60 seconds to pick up this phone before I make his life considerably more complicated. 37 seconds later, Robert Miller's nervous voice crackled through the speaker. Mr. Lawson, I wasn't aware that that you were involved in her situation. My daughter is in a coma because 3 of your students beat her unconscious in your hallway, and you weren't aware I was involved? Vincent's voice was silk wrapped around steel. That's about to change. I'll be at your office in 1 hour. Clear your schedule. Sir, I appreciate your concern, but we're handling this matter according to district protocol. 1 hour, Mr. Miller. And bring the parents of Brittany Madison, Connor Black, and Tyler Stone. It's time we all had a conversation about accountability. Vincent ended the call and turned to Sarah, who had been listening from her chair beside Maya's bed. Her expression was unreadable, but something in her eyes had shifted from pure anger to cautious curiosity. You can't just demand meetings with the principal like you own the place, she said quietly. Vincent's smile was sharp enough to cut glass. Sarah, by the end of this week, I might actually own the place. The Lincoln High School parking lot had never seen a vehicle like Vincent's black Bentley Bentayga. As he stepped out, adjusting his platinum cufflinks, students pressed their faces to classroom windows, phones already recording the mysterious man in the $5,000 suit who moved like he owned everything he saw. Marcus Webb emerged from the passenger seat, his 6 feet 4 inches frame and military bearing making him look like Vincent's personal bodyguard, which in many ways he was. But today, Marcus was carrying a briefcase full of financial records and legal documents that would serve as ammunition in the war Vincent was about to wage. Remember, Vincent said as they approached the school's main entrance, we're not here to threaten. We're here to educate. And if they don't want to learn, Marcus asked, then we'll make the lesson more expensive. Principal Miller's office felt smaller with Vincent in it. The man himself, a thin, nervous administrator in his 50s, had clearly spent the hours since their phone call researching exactly who Vincent Lawson was. The color had drained from his face when he realized he was dealing with a billionaire tech mogul whose influence extended far beyond Georgia's borders. But it was the 3 sets of parents arranged around Miller's conference table that made the room truly interesting. James Madison, city council member and car dealership owner, sat with his arms crossed, his face red with indignation. I don't know who you think you are, but my daughter is the victim here. She's been suspended from school over this incident. Rebecca Black, the state senator, was checking her phone with the practiced dismissiveness of someone used to making problems disappear with political connections. Principal Miller, I have a budget committee meeting in an hour. Can we expedite whatever this is? The Stone parents, both high-powered attorneys, flanked their end of the table like twin sharks scenting blood in the water. David Stone spoke first. Mr. Lawson, we understand you're upset about the Thompson girl, but you should know that any attempt to pursue this matter legally will be met with vigorous defense. Our children acted in self-defense. Vincent took his seat at the head of the table, a position that forced everyone else to look at him like students facing a professor. He opened Marcus's briefcase with deliberate precision, removing files that he arranged in front of him like playing cards. Self-defense, Vincent repeated thoughtfully. That's interesting. Marcus, would you play the security footage for our new friends? Marcus opened his laptop and turned it toward the group. The Lincoln High School hallway appeared on screen, and everyone watched as Maya Thompson, all 5 feet 2 inches and 110 pounds of her, was cornered by 3 larger students near a locker. The footage was silent, but the violence was deafening. Maya never raised her hands, never fought back. She tried to protect her head as the 3 teenagers took turns hitting and kicking her until she collapsed. The room went dead quiet. 47 seconds, Vincent said calmly. That's how long your children beat my daughter while she begged them to stop. Security cameras caught every angle. The audio files catch every word, including Tyler calling her the N-word, Connor laughing about putting the scholarship girl in her place, and Brittany encouraging them to make sure she doesn't get back up. Rebecca Black's phone clattered to the table. James Madison shifted uncomfortably in his seat. The Stone parents exchanged worried glances. Principal Miller cleared his throat. Mr. Lawson, we've already suspended the students involved pending our investigation. Your investigation? Vincent's laugh was cold. Let me save you some time. Your investigation will conclude that this was an unfortunate incident between students, that all parties bear some responsibility, and that increased counseling and sensitivity training will prevent future occurrences. The 3 students will receive brief suspensions. Maya will be encouraged to move forward, and everyone will pretend this never happened. He leaned forward, his eyes moving from parent to parent like a predator selecting prey. That's not going to happen. Vincent opened the first file. James Madison. 3 DUI arrests that mysteriously disappeared from public records. 2 sexual harassment settlements paid quietly through your dealership's legal fund. And approximately $847,000 in unpaid taxes that you've managed to keep off the IRS's radar through creative bookkeeping. Madison's face went from red to gray. How did you? Those records are sealed. David and Patricia Stone. Vincent continued, opening the second file. Your law firm has been billing the school district for services never rendered. $230,000 over the past 3 years. You've also been embezzling from your clients' escrow accounts to cover gambling debts that total just over $400,000. The Stone parents looked like they'd been slapped. Rebecca Black. Vincent's voice dropped to a whisper. Taking bribes from construction companies to influence education contract bids. Using campaign funds for personal expenses. And having an affair with your chief of staff, whose wife happens to be the district attorney. Rebecca's political composure crumbled. This is blackmail. No, Vincent said pleasantly. This is Tuesday. Blackmail would be me threatening to release this information unless you do what I want. I'm not threatening anything. I'm simply informing you of the facts I've discovered in the past 12 hours. He closed the files and looked at Principal Miller. As for you, Robert, your school receives $1.2 million annually in federal grants that are contingulated on maintaining certain safety standards. Standards that your security footage proves you're not meeting. I've already made some calls to Washington. Interesting conversations. Miller's hands shook as he reached for his water glass. Mr. Lawson, what do you want? What do I want? Vincent stood, buttoning his suit jacket with the precision of a man preparing for battle. I want my daughter's attackers expelled permanently. I want their juvenile records unsealed and made public. I want a formal apology from each family, delivered personally to Maya when she wakes up. And I want every administrator who allowed this culture of violence to flourish fired within the week. That's impossible, Rebecca Black sputtered. You can't just. I can, Vincent said simply. And I will. Because here's what all of you fail to understand about me. I've spent 10 years building power, accumulating resources, and learning exactly how this system works. You've been playing checkers in a small town where your money and connections make you feel invincible. He walked to the window, looking out at the school where his daughter should have been safe. I play chess on a global scale, and you just attacked my queen. Vincent turned back to the room, his smile sharp as a blade. You have 24 hours to comply with my requests. After that, every file in Marcus's briefcase becomes public record. Every reporter I know, and I know many, gets copies. Every federal agency with jurisdiction over your various crimes gets a detailed report. He headed toward the door, then paused. Oh, and one more thing. Maya Thompson is no longer the scholarship girl, or that poor black girl from the wrong side of town. She's Vincent Lawson's daughter, and Vincent Lawson doesn't lose. As Vincent and Marcus left the building, chaos erupted behind them. Raised voices, accusations, and the sound of people whose carefully constructed worlds were collapsing in real time. Back at the hospital, Vincent found Sarah exactly where he'd left her, in the chair beside Maya's bed, holding their daughter's hand and reading aloud from her textbook. But now there was something different in her posture, something that suggested she'd been thinking while he was gone. How did it go? She asked without looking up. It went exactly as planned. Vincent sat in the chair across from her, close enough to see Maya's chest rising and falling with each breath. The school board is meeting in an emergency session tonight. The 3 families are scrambling to control damage. And by tomorrow morning, everyone in this town will know exactly what happens when you hurt someone Vincent Lawson loves. Sarah finally looked at him, studying his face like she was seeing him clearly for the first time in years. You're different, she said quietly. Different how? 10 years ago, when things got hard, you ran. Today, when things got hard, you stayed and fought. Her voice was soft, thoughtful. I'm not saying it changes anything between us. I'm not saying I forgive you. But Maya deserves to have a father who fights for her. Vincent felt something crack open in his chest. Not breaking, but healing. I can't undo the last 10 years, Sarah. I can't get back the birthdays I missed, or the nights you stayed up alone when she was sick. But I can make sure that everyone who hurt her pays for it. And I can make sure it never happens again. For the first time since he'd walked back into their lives, Sarah didn't look at him with pure anger. There was something else there now. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But maybe the possibility of it. She's strong, Sarah said, squeezing Maya's hand. Stronger than both of us. She's going to wake up, Vincent. And when she does, she's going to need her father to be the man she deserves, not the man you used to be. Vincent reached across the space between them and gently touched Maya's other hand. Her skin was warm, alive, fighting. Then that's who I'll be, he said. Outside, his phone buzzed with updates from Marcus. Madison requesting a private meeting. Black's office issued a statement about taking time to address personal matters. Stone parents hiring crisis management firm. The school board called an emergency session for 8 p.m. tonight. The district attorney opened an investigation into the Stone firm. IRS task force assigned to Madison audit. The dominoes were falling exactly as Vincent had planned. But the real victory wouldn't come from destroying his daughter's enemies. It would come from the moment Maya opened her eyes and saw that her father had finally come home. And this time, he was never leaving again. The powerful families thought they could intimidate a man they didn't know. But Vincent's just getting started. If you're loving watching karma work its magic, smash that like button and subscribe, because we're about to see what happens when unstoppable force meets immovable corruption. And trust me, Maya's awakening is going to change everything. At 11:47 p.m., Maya's fingers twitched. Sarah felt it first, the subtle movement against her palm as she held their daughter's hand during another long night vigil. For a moment, she thought she'd imagined it, the way exhausted minds play tricks in hospital rooms filled with mechanical breathing and electronic heartbeats. Then Maya's eyelids fluttered. "Vincent!" Sarah's voice cracked with excitement and terror. "Vincent, wake up. She's moving." Vincent jolted awake from the uncomfortable chair he'd claimed in the corner. His businessman's instincts instantly alert despite 3 days of hospital coffee and catnaps. In one smooth motion, he was beside Maya's bed, his hand joining Sarah's as their daughter's eyes slowly opened for the first time in 5 days. Maya's gaze was unfocused at first, confused by the tubes and machines, by the pain medication coursing through her system. But when her vision cleared and she saw her mother's tear-streaked face, she tried to speak around the breathing tube. "Don't try to talk, baby," Sarah whispered, pressing the call button for the nurse. "You're okay. You're safe. Mama's here." But Maya's eyes had found Vincent, and the confusion in them cut through him like glass. She didn't know this man in the expensive suit who was looking at her with desperate love and barely contained relief. To her, he was a stranger who somehow belonged in her most vulnerable moment. Dr. Hayes arrived within minutes, bringing a team of specialists who began the careful process of removing Maya's breathing tube and running tests to assess her neurological function. Throughout the examination, Maya's eyes kept returning to Vincent, questions burning in her gaze that she couldn't yet voice. When the medical team finally cleared the room, leaving the three of them alone for the first time, Maya's first words were barely a whisper. "Ooh, who are you?" Vincent's heart shattered and reformed in the space of those 4 words. He looked to Sarah, who nodded almost imperceptibly, permission to introduce himself to the daughter he'd abandoned. "My name is Vincent," he said softly, pulling his chair closer to her bed. "Vincent Lawson. Maya. I'm your father." The machines registered Maya's elevated heart rate as she processed this information. Her eyes moved between Vincent and Sarah, searching for understanding, for context, for some explanation that would make sense of this moment. "My father." Maya's voice was stronger now, edged with something sharp. "My father left when I was a baby. My father sends money but never calls. My father doesn't." She stopped, studying Vincent's face more carefully, looking for resemblances, looking for truth. "You have his eyes," Sarah said quietly. "You've always had your father's eyes." The silence stretched until Maya spoke again, her voice carrying a maturity that no 15-year-old should possess. "Why are you here now?" Before Vincent could answer, Marcus Webb appeared in the doorway, his expression grim. "Vincent," "We have a problem. You need to see this." Marcus handed Vincent a tablet displaying security footage from the school, but not from the day of the attack. This was from 3 weeks earlier, showing Maya being cornered by the same 3 students in an empty hallway after school. But this time, Maya fought back. The footage showed her defending herself with remarkable skill, using techniques that suggested formal training. She moved with precision, taking down Connor Black with a perfectly executed hip throw before Brittany Madison called for backup. More students appeared, not 3 attackers, but 7. "There's more," Marcus said, swiping to another file. Maya has been attending self-defense classes at Henderson Community Center for the past 2 years. Her instructor is James Henderson, former Marine, runs programs for at-risk youth. He says Maya was one of his best students. Vincent stared at the screen, watching his daughter defend herself with skills he never knew she possessed. But the timestamp showed that this incident had been covered up completely. No suspensions, no police reports, no consequences for the attackers. "Why didn't you tell anyone about this?" Vincent asked Maya gently. Maya's laugh was bitter beyond her years. "Tell who?" "Principal Miller, whose son Tyler Stone happens to be. Tell the police, whose chief plays golf with Connor Black's uncle. Tell my mother, who works 16-hour days just to keep us housed and fed." Sarah's face went white. "Tyler Stone is Principal Miller's son." Marcus nodded grimly. "Stepson, technically. Miller married Tyler's mother 4 years ago. That's why the first attack was buried, why security footage from that day mysteriously malfunctioned, and why Maya was told to let it go when she tried to report it." The revelation hit the room like a bomb. Vincent felt his carefully controlled rage crystallize into something cold and absolute. This wasn't random bullying. It was systematic persecution enabled by corruption at the highest levels of the school administration. "There's more," Marcus continued. "The attack that put Maya in the hospital wasn't spontaneous. They planned it. Text messages recovered from Brittany Madison's phone show coordination with at least 6 other students. They were going to teach the scholarship girl a permanent lesson because Maya had been accepted to a summer program at MIT. Vincent's hands clenched into fists. "MIT? Full scholarship," Sarah said proudly, even through her tears. "Computer science and engineering. She's been coding since she was 12, Vincent. She built her own computer from recycled parts. She's already been accepted to 3 different universities. Maya was brilliant, talented, destined for greatness. And they had tried to destroy her because she threatened their sense of entitlement. The families know," Marcus said quietly. "That's why they agreed to your demands so quickly. They thought they were dealing with standard damage control, but their lawyers discovered the MIT acceptance. They realized Maya isn't just some poor girl they can intimidate into silence. She's a certified genius with a full-ride scholarship to one of the most prestigious universities in the world." Vincent stood up, his mind racing through implications and possibilities. What else? Henderson Community Center, where Maya learned self-defense, has been trying to get funding for 2 years. The city council keeps blocking their grants. Guess who's been leading the opposition? James Madison, Vincent said grimly. And Rebecca Black's been pushing legislation that would eliminate scholarship programs like the one Maya qualified for. They've been systematically trying to cut off every avenue of advancement for kids like her. Maya spoke up from her hospital bed, her voice clear despite her injuries. "They don't just hate me. They hate what I represent. They hate that a poor black girl from the wrong side of town can be smarter than their kids, work harder than their kids, and still succeed despite everything they do to stop us." She looked directly at Vincent, and in that moment, he saw not just his daughter, but a warrior who had been fighting battles he never knew existed. "So, Vincent Lawson," Maya said, using his full name with deliberate formality, "what exactly are you planning to do about it?" The question hung in the air like a challenge and an invitation. Vincent realized that Maya wasn't just asking what he would do to her attackers. She was asking what kind of father he was prepared to be, not just to her, but to all the kids like her who were fighting systemic oppression with nothing but their own determination. Vincent pulled out his phone and began typing a message to Marcus. "I want Henderson Community Center fully funded by the end of the week. I want scholarships established for every qualified student in this district, regardless of their family's political connections. I want Maya's MIT acceptance announced in every newspaper in Georgia. And I want everyone in this town to understand that attacking my daughter was the worst mistake they ever made. Not because she's Vincent Lawson's daughter, but because she's Maya Thompson, and Maya Thompson is extraordinary. He looked at Maya, then at Sarah, then back at his daughter. I'm going to make sure you never have to fight alone again, he said. And I'm going to make sure every kid like you gets the same chance. For the first time since he'd returned to their lives, Maya smiled. It was small, tentative, but real. Okay, Dad, she said quietly. Let's see what you've got. The word Dad hit Vincent like lightning. Not because it was the first time she'd said it, but because this time it sounded like she meant it. Outside the hospital window, dawn was breaking over Columbus, Georgia. But inside room 314, a family was being reborn, and a war was about to escalate into something much bigger than revenge. It was about to become a revolution. Maya just called Vincent Dad for the first time, and honestly, I'm not crying, you're crying. If this moment hits you right in the feelings, hit that subscribe button, because we're about to see what happens when a brilliant daughter and her powerful father team up to change an entire system. The real fight is just beginning. The counterattack came at 3:17 a.m., 48 hours after Maya called Vincent Dad for the first time. Marcus Webb's voice cut through the hospital's quiet darkness as he burst into room 314, his face grim with urgency. Vincent, we have a problem. Multiple problems. Vincent was instantly alert, his protective instincts honed by years of corporate warfare. What happened? MIT just received an anonymous tip claiming Maya's application contained falsified information. They've launched a formal investigation and suspended her scholarship pending review. Marcus's jaw was tight with controlled fury. Someone also filed a complaint with Child Protective Services claiming Sarah is an unfit mother who's been using Maya's academic achievements to exploit financial aid systems. Sarah's face went white. They can't. Maya earned that scholarship. It gets worse, Marcus continued. The DA's office received a sworn affidavit claiming Vincent has been bribing school officials to target the Madison, Black, and Stone families. Rebecca Black held a press conference an hour ago, announcing a state investigation into outside influences corrupting our educational system. Vincent felt the familiar ice of corporate combat settling in his veins. But this was different. This wasn't about market shares or quarterly profits. They were attacking his family with surgical precision. There's more, Marcus said quietly. James Henderson's community center was raided by ICE agents 2 hours ago. They're claiming he's been harboring undocumented immigrants. Half the kids in Maya's self-defense program have parents who are terrified to come forward now. Maya struggled to sit up in her hospital bed, her eyes blazing despite her injuries. They're destroying everyone who helped me. Vincent's phone rang, a number he didn't recognize. When he answered, Rebecca Black's smooth political voice filled the room. Mr. Lawson, I think it's time we talked like reasonable adults. I'm listening. You've made your point. You're a powerful man with vast resources. But power works both ways in this town, and you just learned that lesson. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to withdraw your threats against our families, publicly apologize for the harassment you've inflicted, and return to Seattle where you belong. In exchange, we'll make Maya's little problems with MIT disappear, and the CPS investigation will conclude that Sarah is simply overwhelmed by stress. Vincent's grip on the phone tightened. And if I refuse, Maya's scholarship disappears permanently. Every university that's accepted her will receive similar tips about academic fraud. Sarah loses custody of her daughter due to neglect and financial instability, and you'll face federal charges for intimidation, bribery, and corruption of public officials. The line went dead. The room fell silent except for the steady beeping of Maya's monitors. Vincent stared at the phone in his hands, feeling the weight of impossible choices crushing down on him. They could do all that, Sarah whispered. Marcus nodded grimly. They're playing for keeps now. Rebecca Black has connections in state government. The Madison family controls local law enforcement, and the Stones have relationships with federal prosecutors. They've created a web of legal threats that could destroy everything Maya's worked for. Vincent looked at his daughter, seeing fear in her eyes for the first time since she'd awakened. Not fear of her injuries or her attackers, but fear that her dreams were slipping away because her father had tried to protect her. This is my fault, Vincent said quietly. I came in like a hurricane, thinking money and power could solve everything. I didn't think that they'd strike back at you. Maya's voice was steady despite her tears. So what do we do? Before Vincent could answer, Dr. Hayes appeared in the doorway with two people Vincent didn't recognize. A middle-aged black woman in a business suit and a younger man with a badge. I'm sorry to interrupt, Dr. Hayes said, but this is Janet Williams from Child Protective Services and Detective Rodriguez from the Columbus Police Department. They need to speak with you. Janet Williams stepped forward, her expression professionally sympathetic. Ms. Thompson, we've received concerning reports about Maya's living conditions and your ability to provide adequate care. I'm going to need to conduct an immediate assessment. Detective Rodriguez focused on Vincent. Mr. Lawson, I have a warrant to search your phone and electronic devices in connection with allegations of witness intimidation and public corruption. The room erupted into controlled chaos. Marcus stepped between Vincent and the detective while Sarah clutched Maya's hand as the CPS worker began asking invasive questions about their finances, their living situation, and their family dynamics. Maya watched it all with growing horror. These strangers were dissecting her life, questioning her mother's love, treating her family like criminals. The scholarship she'd earned through years of sacrifice and brilliance was being destroyed by lies. The community center that had given her strength and skills was under attack. Everyone who had ever helped Maya Thompson was paying the price for Vincent Lawson's intervention. Stop, Maya said quietly. No one heard her over the official questions and legal procedures. Stop. Maya's voice cracked like a whip, silencing everyone in the room. She looked directly at her father, and Vincent saw something break behind her eyes. Not her spirit, but her trust in him. You said you'd make sure I never had to fight alone again, Maya said, her voice hollow. But all you did was make more enemies. Stronger enemies. Smarter enemies. Vincent felt each word like a physical blow. Mom works 3 jobs to keep us afloat, and now they're saying she's unfit because our apartment isn't big enough and we don't have enough money. Mr. Henderson gave me a place to learn how to protect myself, and now IC is tearing apart families because of your war with these people. Maya's tears fell freely now, but her voice remained steady. I got an MIT because I'm smart and I work harder than anyone else in this school. But now they're going to take that away and make everyone believe I'm a fraud. And the worst part is, people like me, kids from families like ours, they're going to look at what happened to me and decide it's not worth trying. Because even when we do everything right, even when we're brilliant and determined and brave, people like the Madisons and the Blacks and the Stones can still destroy us. She looked at Vincent with eyes that held too much pain for a 15-year-old. I don't need a father who shows up with money and power 10 years too late. I needed a father who was here when I was learning to walk, when I was crying about kids calling me names, when I was staying up all night teaching myself to code because we couldn't afford computer classes. Vincent felt his world collapsing around him. Every word Maya spoke was true. Every accusation was deserved. I can fix this, he said desperately. I can make them stop. Ow. Maya's laugh was bitter. By giving them what they want. By walking away again. By letting them win, so they'll give me back my scholarship and leave Mom alone. The CPS worker resumed her questioning. The detective continued, demanding Vincent's devices, and Marcus frantically made phone calls trying to coordinate legal defense. But Vincent only heard Maya's voice, quiet and broken. I called you, Dad. I actually started to believe you were going to stay and fight for us. But you can't fight a system that's designed to crush people like me. You can only make it angry enough to crush us harder. Sarah stood up, her exhaustion and fear finally overwhelming her composure. Maybe you should go, Vincent. Maybe they're right. Maybe Maya and I were better off before you came back. The words hit Vincent like a physical blow. Sarah, who had started to forgive him, who had begun to believe he could be the man they needed, was telling him to leave. Vincent looked around the hospital room that had become a battlefield, at the officials interrogating his family, at his daughter who had stopped looking at him like he might be her hero, at the woman he'd never stopped loving who was protecting their child by pushing him away. For 10 years, Vincent had run from hard choices. Now, facing the hardest choice of his life, every instinct screamed at him to do what he'd always done. Retreat to Seattle, use his lawyers to minimize the damage, convince himself that walking away was really protecting the people he loved. Outside, dawn was breaking over Columbus, Georgia. Inside room 314, Vincent Lawson faced a moment that would define not just his relationship with his daughter, but the man he would choose to become. The question wasn't whether he had the power to fight back. The question was whether he had the courage to stay and face the consequences of a war that his family would have to live with long after he was gone. This is the moment that breaks or makes a father, when staying and fighting might hurt the people you love more than walking away. What would you do in Vincent's shoes? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because Part 7 is going to show us what Vincent Lawson is really made of. And trust me, you're not ready for what comes next. Vincent looked at his daughter's broken trust, his ex-lover's protective rejection, and the officials dismantling their lives with legal precision. Every fiber of his being screamed at him to run, to retreat to Seattle and minimize the damage from a safe distance. Instead, he pulled out his phone and dialed a number that made Marcus Webb's eyes go wide with shock. "Elena, it's Vincent. I need the nuclear option." Elena Vasquez, the most feared investigative journalist in America and Vincent's former college roommate, answered on the first ring. "Vincent Lawson, haven't heard from you in 3 years. This must be good. It's about my daughter. I didn't know you had a daughter." "Neither did I, until a week ago." "Elena, I need you to destroy some people. Completely. Publicly. And I need it to happen in the next 6 hours." Vincent turned to face the room, his voice carrying a deadly calm that made the CPS worker pause mid-question. "Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like you to meet Elena Vasquez from the Washington Herald." "Elena, say hello to Detective Rodriguez, Ms. Williams from CPS, and the various officials who are about to become very famous for all the wrong reasons." Elena's voice came through the phone speaker, crisp and professional. "Hello, everyone. I'm recording this call for accuracy. Detective Rodriguez, Ms. Williams, I'll be needing statements from both of you within the hour about the coordination between your agencies and certain political figures. Particularly interested in any communications you've had with State Senator Rebecca Black or City Councilman James Madison in the past 48 hours. Detective Rodriguez's hand froze on Vincent's phone. "I don't know what you're implying." "I'm not implying anything." Elena's voice cut through the room like a blade. "I have recordings, text messages, financial records showing payments made to both of your departments from shell companies controlled by the Stone, Madison, and Black families. What I'm offering you now is the chance to cooperate with a federal investigation rather than become subjects of it." The CPS worker stepped backward. "This is highly irregular." "What's irregular?" Vincent said, his voice carrying 10 years of accumulated power and authority. "Is a Child Protective Services worker initiating an investigation 60 minutes after receiving an anonymous tip, without following standard protocols, and arriving at a hospital at 3 a.m. with a police officer who doesn't have jurisdiction over family services." Maya watched in fascination as her father transformed before her eyes. This wasn't the desperate man who had begged for forgiveness or the angry billionaire who had threatened school officials. This was Vincent Lawson operating at full capacity, calculating, ruthless, and absolutely certain of his power. "Ms. Williams," Vincent continued, "your last 3 cases were all initiated by tips from the same political network. Poor families, mostly Black and Hispanic, who had children achieving academic success that threatened certain people's sense of order. Elena has been tracking this pattern for months." Elena's voice filled the room again. "Actually, it's been 18 months. The story's called The Pipeline to Poverty: How Local Officials Weaponize Child Services to Maintain Educational Apartheid. It runs tomorrow morning, front page, above the fold. Unless, of course, certain people would prefer to cooperate rather than be exposed." Vincent looked directly at Maya, and for the first time since she'd awakened, he saw something other than disappointment in her eyes. He saw recognition, not of a father figure, but of an ally who operated on her level of intelligence and determination. "Maya," he said quietly, "you're right. I can't fight a system designed to crush people like you, but I can expose it. I can make sure everyone in America knows exactly how it works and who's running it." He turned back to the officials. "Detective Rodriguez, you have 2 choices. Walk out of this room right now and tell Rebecca Black that her little power play failed, or stay here and become part of the biggest political corruption scandal Georgia's seen in 50 years. Rodriguez looked at his warrant, then at Maya lying in her hospital bed, then at Vincent's absolute certainty. Without another word, he turned and left. "Ms. Williams," Vincent continued, Child Protective Services exists to protect children from actual harm. Maya Thompson is not being harmed by her mother's love, her academic excellence, or her family's financial struggles. She's being harmed by a system that punishes achievement when it comes from the wrong kind of family. The CPS worker hesitated, clearly recognizing that she'd walked into something much bigger than a routine family assessment. Vincent's phone buzzed with a text from Marcus, Black, Madison, and Stone families all requesting immediate private meetings. MIT has agreed to expedited review of Maya's scholarship. ICE raid at Henderson Center being investigated by Internal Affairs. But Vincent didn't look at the message. He kept his eyes on Maya. You said I showed up 10 years too late, he told his daughter. You're right. I did. But I'm not here to fix the past, Maya. I'm here to make sure your future is everything you've earned. He pulled out his laptop and turned the screen toward her. Elena, show them the Henderson footage. Security footage filled the screen, not from the school, but from outside Henderson Community Center. The video showed ICE agents arriving in unmarked vans, but it also showed something else. The agents had been directed to specific locations by someone who knew the building layout intimately. That's Tyler Stone, Maya breathed, recognizing the teenager directing the raid from the passenger seat of the lead van. Principal Miller's stepson, using his access to school district partnerships with community organizations to target the families of students who threaten his family's status quo. Elena's voice explained through the phone. The same Tyler Stone who organized the attack on Maya, whose mother is married to the principal who covered it up, and whose family has been systematically destroying opportunities for minority students for 3 years. Sarah spoke for the first time since asking Vincent to leave. They're not just bullies. They're organized. It's bigger than that, Vincent said, opening another file. Elena's investigation traced this pattern across 12 school districts in Georgia. Poor kids who excel academically get targeted by connected families. Parents lose jobs, get investigated by various agencies, sometimes get deported. The kids either drop out, get expelled on fabricated charges, or transfer to schools with fewer resources. Maya sat up straighter in her hospital bed, her analytical mind processing the implications. It's systematic educational suppression, designed to maintain existing power structures, Vincent confirmed. Elena's story doesn't just expose what happened to you, Maya. It exposes a conspiracy to prevent social mobility through academic achievement. He looked at Sarah, then back at Maya. That's why I'm not walking away. Not because I'm your father, though I am. I should have been here all along. But because what they did to you is part of something evil enough that it has to be stopped. Vincent's phone rang. Rebecca Black's number flashed on the screen. He answered and put on speaker. Senator Black. Lawson, you son of a bitch. What do you want? I want Tyler Stone, Connor Black, and Brittany Madison expelled permanently and charged as adults for conspiracy and assault. I want Principal Miller fired and investigated for official corruption. I want Henderson Community Center fully funded and protected from any future harassment. And I want Maya's scholarship to MIT restored with a public apology from the university. And if we refuse, then tomorrow morning, every American with internet access will read Elena Vasquez's investigation into systematic educational suppression in Georgia, featuring detailed documentation of your corruption, your son's leadership in organizing attacks on minority students, and your use of public agencies to intimidate families who threaten your political base. The line was quiet for a long moment. You're talking about destroying careers, Vincent, ending political futures, ruining families. Vincent looked at Maya, remembering her broken face when he first arrived at the hospital, remembering Sarah's tears, remembering 10 years of his daughter growing up without a father because he'd been too much of a coward to stay and fight for his family. Rebecca, he said quietly, you should have thought about that before you tried to destroy mine. He ended the call and looked at his daughter. Maya, I can't give you back the 10 years I missed. I can't undo the pain of growing up thinking your father didn't love you enough to stay. But I can make sure that every other kid like you, every brilliant, determined, beautiful kid who deserves every opportunity in the world, gets the chance to succeed without having to fight alone. For the first time since she called him Dad, Maya smiled. Okay, she said. Let's finish this. Sarah stood up and walked to Vincent's side. Not romantically, not with forgiveness for the past, but with the recognition that they were partners in protecting their daughter's future. "What do you need us to do?" she asked. Vincent felt something shift inside his chest. Not healing from his mistakes, but acceptance of his responsibility to make sure they led to something better. "We're going to tell the truth," he said. "All of it. And we're going to make sure the whole world listens." Outside, dawn had fully broken over Columbus, Georgia. Inside room 314, a family had finally united. Not just as mother, father, and daughter, but as three people who understood that some fights are bigger than personal pain, and some victories require everyone to stand together. The war for Maya's future was about to become a revolution for every child who had ever been told they didn't deserve to dream. Vincent just chose to stay and fight, but this time he's fighting smart. If you're here for the comeback story of the century, smash that subscribe button, because Elena Vasquez is about to bring the receipts, and what happens next is going to change everything. Not just for Maya, but for every kid who's ever been told they don't belong in the winner's circle. Elena Vasquez's story broke at 6 a.m. Eastern Time with a headline that stopped the nation in its tracks. "The Pipeline to Poverty: How Georgia Officials Weaponize Government Agencies to Crush Minority Academic Excellence." By 6:15 a.m., Maya's hospital room had become the epicenter of a media earthquake that was reshaping the foundations of American education policy. Vincent's laptop screen filled with notifications as the story spread across social media like wildfire. Hashtag Justice for Maya began trending within minutes, followed by hashtag Systemic Suppression and hashtag Maya Strong. But it wasn't just hashtags. Elena had included audio recordings, financial documents, and video evidence that turned the Thompson family's personal nightmare into a national reckoning. The centerpiece was a recording of Rebecca Black, James Madison, and the Stone parents in a conference call from 2 days earlier, strategizing about how to neutralize the Lawson situation by targeting Maya's scholarship and Sarah's custody. Their voices, cold and calculating as they discussed destroying a 15-year-old girl's future, played on every major news network in America. "They actually recorded themselves planning to destroy our daughter," Sarah whispered, watching CNN replay the damning audio. Vincent's phone rang constantly. Reporters, politicians, celebrities, CEOs, all wanting to be on the right side of the story that was rapidly becoming a symbol of everything wrong with American power structures. But the call that mattered came at 7:23 a.m. "Mr. Lawson, this is Dr. Patricia Chun, president of MIT. The woman's voice was crisp, authoritative, and deeply embarrassed. "I'm calling to personally apologize for the suspension of Maya's scholarship and to inform you that not only has it been fully reinstated, but we're also offering her a full presidential scholarship that includes housing, research opportunities, and a guaranteed path to our graduate programs." Maya's eyes widened as she listened to the speaker. This wasn't just getting her scholarship back. This was MIT treating her like academic royalty. Furthermore, Dr. Chin continued, "I want Maya to know that MIT stands firmly against any institution or individual who would try to suppress academic excellence based on race, class, or political connections. We will be launching our own investigation into any university that received similar false reports about promising minority students." Before Vincent could respond, Marcus burst into the room with news that made everyone freeze. "Tyler Stone, Connor Black, and Brittany Madison were arrested 20 minutes ago," he announced. "Adult charges for conspiracy, assault, and federal civil rights violations." The FBI raided the Stone parents' law firm, Rebecca Black's offices, and James Madison's dealerships simultaneously. Principal Miller's been terminated and is facing federal charges for conspiracy and violation of civil rights under color of authority. Maya sat up straighter, her eyes bright with something Vincent hadn't seen since she'd awakened. Hope mixed with fierce satisfaction. "What about the families?" she asked. Marcus grinned. Rebecca Black announced her resignation from the state Senate effective immediately. She's facing federal corruption charges, and her political career is over. James Madison's car dealerships are being investigated for tax fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy. His city council seat is gone. The Stone parents are facing disbarment and federal conspiracy charges. The hospital room door opened, and James Henderson walked in, the Marine who ran the community center where Maya had learned to defend herself. Behind him came a group of teenagers Maya recognized from her self-defense classes, their faces bright with victory and vindication. Maya, Henderson's voice boomed with pride. Girl, you did it. You brought down the whole damn system. One of the younger students, a 13-year-old named Destiny, whose family had been threatened with deportation for her academic success, ran to Maya's bedside. The IC investigation got dropped. My mom doesn't have to hide anymore. And Mr. Henderson says we're getting a new community center that's 3 times bigger. Vincent felt a warmth in his chest that had nothing to do with revenge or victory over his enemies. These were Maya's people, the community she'd built through her own strength and determination. They weren't celebrating his power or his money. They were celebrating Maya's courage and the justice it had finally brought. Maya looked around the room at her chosen family, then at Sarah, then finally at Vincent. You kept your promise, she said quietly. Which promise? You said you'd make sure I never had to fight alone again. She gestured to the teenagers surrounding her bed, to Henderson beaming with pride, to Sarah holding her hand, to the news reports showing protests across the country demanding educational justice. I'm not alone anymore. None of us are. Vincent's phone buzzed with a text from Elena, Secretary of Education, calling for federal investigation into systematic educational suppression. Congressional hearings scheduled. Your daughter just changed national education policy. Pretty good week's work. But the moment that broke Vincent completely came when Maya's voice, still weak from her injuries, rose above the celebration in the room. Everyone, I want you to meet my father, Vincent Lawson. The simple word father, not spoken in anger or testing, but with pride and acceptance, hit Vincent like lightning. Maya was claiming him publicly, in front of her community, as someone worthy of being called her dad. Henderson stepped forward and extended his hand. Any father who fights like this for his daughter is welcome in our community, he said simply. One by one, the teenagers came forward to shake Vincent's hand, to thank him, to welcome him into the family Maya had built for herself. These kids, brilliant, determined, resilient kids who had been targeted by the same system that hurt Maya, were accepting him not because of his money, but because of his commitment to their futures. Sarah approached him as the celebration continued around them. Vincent, she said softly, I need to tell you something. He braced himself, expecting conditions, expectations, or reminders of his past failures. Instead, she said, I'm proud of you, not for the money or the power or the revenge, but for staying, for choosing to be the father Maya needed instead of the man you used to be. Vincent felt tears he didn't know he was capable of shedding. Sarah, I know I can't undo. I'm not asking you to undo anything, she interrupted. I'm asking you to keep being the man you became this week. The man who chose his family over his fears. Maya can be proud to call dad. She looked toward their daughter, surrounded by friends who were planning their return to the community center, talking about college applications and dreams they could now pursue without fear. Vincent, Sarah said, Maya and I would like you to stay. Not as the man you were, but as the man you are now, if you want to. Vincent looked around the hospital room that had become the center of a revolution. He saw his daughter, brilliant, strong, surrounded by love and community, planning a future that was now unlimited. He saw the woman he'd never stopped loving offering him not forgiveness for the past, but partnership in building something better. For the first time in 10 years, Vincent Lawson was exactly where he belonged. I'm not going anywhere, he said. Ever. Maya looked up from her conversation about MIT's computer science program and smiled. Not the tentative, testing smile she'd given him before, but the full, radiant smile of a daughter who knew her father was finally home to stay. Outside the hospital windows, protesters continued to gather, carrying signs that read justice for Maya and educational equality now. News crews interviewed students from across Georgia who were coming forward with their own stories of systematic suppression, empowered by Maya's courage to speak their truth. The Thompson family's personal nightmare had become America's awakening. And in room 314, a father, mother, and daughter were finally becoming the family they were always meant to be, not through the absence of struggle, but through the triumph of love, courage, and the refusal to let injustice have the final word. Vincent pulled out his phone and made one last call. Marcus, I need you to establish the Maya Thompson Foundation. Full scholarships for students from underserved communities, legal defense funds for families targeted by systematic suppression, and funding for community programs that develop academic excellence regardless of zip code or family income. He looked at his daughter, whose eyes had gone wide at hearing her name attached to something so significant. "How much of an endowment are we talking about?" Marcus asked. Vincent looked at Sarah, who nodded with understanding and pride. He looked at Maya, who was listening intently. He looked at the community of teenagers who had welcomed him into their family. "Everything," Vincent said simply. "Whatever it takes to make sure no other Maya Thompson has to fight this battle alone." Maya Thompson had been attacked by bullies and nearly destroyed by a corrupt system. But she had emerged stronger, surrounded by love, and destined for greatness that no one could ever take away from her again. Her father had finally come home, and together, they were going to change the world. Maya just got justice, her full scholarship back, and a father who proved he'll never leave again. But the most beautiful part, she's inspired a national movement for educational equality. If this story gave you chills, hit that subscribe button, because Maya's journey from victim to victor just changed everything, and her foundation is going to help thousands of kids who deserve the same fighting chance at their dreams. 6 months later, Maya Thompson Lawson stood at the podium of the newly constructed Henderson Community Learning Center, looking out at an audience of 300 students, parents, educators, and community leaders who had gathered for the first annual Maya Thompson Foundation Scholarship Ceremony. Her scars had faded, but her strength had only grown. She wore a simple blue dress that Sarah had bought for the occasion, and around her neck was a locket Vincent had given her. Not expensive jewelry meant to buy forgiveness, but a simple piece containing a photo of the three of them taken the day she came home from the hospital. "A year ago," Maya began, her voice clear and confident, "I was lying in a hospital bed wondering if my dreams were over before they'd really begun. I thought I had to choose between fighting back and moving forward, between seeking justice and finding peace." In the front row, Vincent sat between Sarah and James Henderson, watching his daughter command the room with the same natural authority that had made her a target and would now make her a leader. Sarah held his hand, not romantically, not yet, but with the comfortable intimacy of partners raising an extraordinary child together. "But I learned something important," Maya continued. "We don't have to choose between justice and peace, between fighting back and moving forward. We can do both. We can demand better and build better at the same time." Behind her, a presentation screen showed the Foundation's first-year impact. 847 scholarships awarded to students from underserved communities, 23 families protected from systematic harassment, 12 community learning centers established across the South, and 3 federal investigations into educational suppression that had resulted in policy changes affecting millions of students. "The students receiving scholarships today aren't just getting money for college," Maya said. "They're getting something more important. The knowledge that their excellence is valued, their dreams are valid, and their communities will fight to protect their futures." Vincent watched as Maya called the first scholarship recipient to the stage. Destiny Martinez, the 13-year-old whose family had been threatened with deportation for her academic success. Now 15, Destiny would be attending Stanford University in the fall with a full ride, and her mother sat in the audience, crying tears of joy and relief. One by one, Maya announced the names of students who had found their paths to success through the Foundation's support. Former honor students whose families had been systematically targeted, brilliant kids from poor communities who had been told their achievements were impossible, teenagers who had been bullied for being too smart or too ambitious for their backgrounds. Each story was different, but each carried the same theme: excellence recognized, dreams protected, communities invested in their children's futures. "When I was lying in that hospital bed," Maya said as the last scholarship recipient left the stage, "my father made me a promise. He said I would never have to fight alone again. Today, I want to make the same promise to every student in this room, every family represented here, every young person watching this online who wonders if their dreams are worth pursuing." She looked directly at Vincent, then at Sarah, then back at the audience. "You will never have to fight alone again, because we are building something bigger than individual success. We are building a community that values excellence wherever it comes from, that protects dreams regardless of zip codes, and that refuses to let anyone tell our children that they don't deserve to shine." The applause was thunderous, but Vincent barely heard it. He was remembering the broken girl in the hospital bed 6 months ago, comparing her to the confident young woman on the stage who had just promised to change the world, and who clearly had the power to do it. After the ceremony, the Thompson-Lawson family gathered in their new home. Not Vincent's Seattle penthouse, not Sarah's struggling apartment, but a house they had chosen together in a neighborhood where Maya could bike to the community center and Sarah could pursue her teaching degree at the local university. The house wasn't mansion-sized, but it was filled with something Vincent's penthouse had never contained: the sound of genuine family life. Sarah's textbooks scattered across the kitchen table, Maya's computer coding project spread across the living room, Vincent's business calls that now focused on foundation work rather than corporate conquests. "Dad," Maya said, curling up beside him on the couch with her laptop, "I got my first semester schedule from MIT." Vincent looked over her shoulder at classes like Advanced Algorithms, Quantum Computing Theory, and Social Justice and Technology Design. His daughter wasn't just pursuing academic excellence. She was preparing to use her brilliance to solve problems that mattered. "Proud of you, kiddo," he said, kissing the top of her head. Sarah emerged from the kitchen, carrying 3 mugs of hot chocolate, a family tradition they had established during Maya's recovery. She handed one to Vincent and settled into the chair across from them, her own contentment visible in every relaxed line of her body. "Vincent," she said quietly, "Maya and I have been talking, and we have something to ask you." Vincent felt his heart skip, wondering if they were finally ready to address the question of whether he and Sarah might rebuild their romantic relationship, or if they would remain co-parents and friends. "What is it?" Maya looked up from her laptop, grinning. "We want to know if you'd be willing to walk me down the aisle at my high school graduation next month. Not as Vincent Lawson the billionaire, but as Dad." Vincent felt his throat close with emotion. "You want me to walk you down the aisle?" "Well, yeah," Maya said matter-of-factly. "You're my father. Who else would do it?" The simplicity of her acceptance, the casual way she claimed him as an essential part of her biggest moments, hit Vincent harder than any corporate victory ever had. "I will be honored," he managed. Sarah smiled, watching the exchange with the satisfaction of a woman who had seen her deepest wish fulfilled, not for herself, but for her daughter. "And after graduation," Maya continued, "I want you and Mom to drive me to MIT together, like a real family road trip." Vincent looked at Sarah, who nodded with a smile that held affection, partnership, and maybe, just maybe, the possibility of something deeper developing between them again someday. "Like a real family," Vincent repeated. "We are a real family," Maya said firmly. "We're just not traditional. But neither am I, so it works out perfectly." Later that evening, after Maya had gone to bed and Sarah was grading papers at the kitchen table, Vincent stood on their back porch looking at the stars above Columbus, Georgia. His phone buzzed with messages from Marcus about foundation business, from Elena about follow-up stories, from dozens of people whose lives had been changed by Maya's courage. But the message that mattered most was a simple text from Maya. "Thanks for staying, Dad. Love you." Vincent typed back, "Love you too, kiddo. Always." For 10 years, Vincent Lawson had run from the hardest questions of his life. What kind of man did he want to be? What legacy did he want to leave? What was worth fighting for when the fight got difficult?